All right. By the looks of things, Brooke has joined us. Hey, Brooke, how are you going?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
That's
So
good.
on that note, I reckon we will get started. So hello, everyone. As I said, my name's Jane Johns and I work for Primary Industries Education Foundation Australia as an education officer. I would like to first begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land from which I am speaking to you today, the Wurundjeri people, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Thank you so much for joining us today for this very special Science Week event. I'd like to say a huge thank you to Dairy Australia for helping us facilitate this event, as well as our two panelists, Stu and Brooke. Thank you so much for making the time to join us. And another massive thank you to St Bridget's College for being our representative school for this session. We're really looking forward to hearing your questions and questions from all of the other schools that have joined us today. If you wouldn't mind doing so, it would be great for schools to pop the name of their school and the number of students that are joining us in the chat, just so that we know who we're talking to. And I reckon we will kick off, if that sounds all right by you. So what we'll do for a start is we'll hear a little bit about both of our panelists' career journeys, so what it is that they do within the dairy industry and how they got to that position. And then we'll get into a more in-depth discussion about our Science Week topic, which is innovation, powering future industries. So on that note, I reckon we might start with Stu. Would you mind just giving us a bit of a rundown, Stu, about who you are, what you do, and how you ended up in your position?
Yeah, thanks, Jane, and g'day to everyone. My name's Stuart Griffin. We dairy farm in West Gippsland, so near Moe and Trafalgar. The farm's been in my family for 103 years this year, so I think it's about the anniversary now. So my family's had a pretty long association with dairy. I'm fourth generation on the farm. We currently milk 480 cows. All spring calving. We are smack bang in the middle of it now. There's calves everywhere. There's cows going everywhere. We are flat out, but it's a good time of year. My wife Belinda and I, we what's called share farm with my family. So my parents essentially own the farm. Belinda and I own the cattle, and we run the day-to-day operations. We're in charge of all those day-to-day things. We're in charge of all the staff. We employ all the staff. So we've got 3 staff with us at the moment. But a little bit about how I got to where I was. I obviously grew up on the farm, always had an interest in the farm. When I finished year 12, I actually went to university and studied veterinary science. So I became a veterinarian for, full-time for 2 years, a bit over 2 years, and then had an opportunity to come back to the farm and decided to give it a go. And 13 years later, here we are. So, but that's, studied veterinary science and worked as a veterinarian before coming home. But since then, numerous courses to get me up to speed with what happens, all other aspects of running a dairy farm. The animal health wasn't too bad, but everything else, courses in fertiliser, business management, people management, that's huge these days, spraying, feeding, growing pasture, the learning, doesn't stop. Does that cover it, Jane?
Yeah, absolutely, Stu. That's awesome. Oh, and I just will add, sorry, forgot to say at the start of this session, if any schools or anyone that's in attendance has any questions, they're more than welcome to pop them in the chat throughout the session. But we will also have a designated question session at the end. That was awesome, Stu. Thank you so much for that overview, and how interesting. Very, very cool that you've been able to apply the skills that you learned through your course doing veterinary science to the work that you're doing now. Obviously, that would be a massive help in the field that you're working in, with animal husbandry being such a massive part of the dairy industry. I might pass over to Brooke now, just to learn a little bit about your current role, Brooke, and how you ended up in that position.
Sure. So I'm Brooke Lane. I farm at Alvey near Colac in Victoria. We have been here for just over 9 years. We started out as a share farmer, so like what Stu's doing at the moment, and then we've progressed through to leasing our farm now. So essentially we pay a rent for our farm, and then we own everything for cows and machinery and all of that sort of thing. So yeah, worked our way up from there. I came from the farm straight out of high school. Met my fiance when I was still in year 12, and he was already here managing. So I went and done a traineeship outside of farming for 12 months in business admin. Office job was not for me, so I ended up here full time, and that's where I still am. And doing a couple of other roles industry wise, but here most of the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, Brooke, were you from a farming family as well?
No, so we're both first generation farmers. Clint's extended family have some farming history, but neither of us were handed a farm or had a farm to go on to. So yeah, both first generations. Yeah,
that's awesome. Would you be able to describe to us a bit about the ways that people that may not be from a farming family could enter the industry? Because I think it's something that is a bit of a barrier in a lot of people's minds, and it's a really great thing to highlight that you don't have to be from a farming background to enter the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's definitely no one way to get into the industry, and there's no necessarily right way, and there's certainly no right end goal either. There's a lot of different things that that you can end up doing. So, I mean, if you like, as a school student, a good way is to obviously engage with the agricultural programs that are offered, but just getting it and expressing interest with farmers is probably the best way to do it. There's a lot of farmers looking for staff at the moment, so there's a good opportunity to be able to step in to a role and learn. If you're keen, then you're gonna find a job pretty easily. Being able to find a good employer is the key, especially for young people. Finding an employer that is interested in developing young people and helping them grow in their careers, not just the employer's own career. And there's plenty of them out there. That's probably the first step, is obviously developing skills with working for other people on various farms, on various setups, because everyone's different. Everyone farms differently.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. There's actually a fantastic program that may be of interest to students and teachers called Ag Career Start, which is a gap year program facilitated by the NFF that can help support young people in getting into a gap year on different farms all over Australia in every different industry. So that could be a good way for people that are looking for a bit of a taster or to make those connections to get involved. All right. Well, thank you so much. That was awesome. Now, Stu, I noticed that you just shared a podcast in the chat. Would you care to explain what that's all about?
Yeah, I've just dropped Brooke in. So to hear more about Brooke's story and how she's got to where she is, and because it is a great story. That story of first generation farmers, and I mean, I'm incredibly lucky to be on a family farm, and my wife and I don't take that for granted, but it is a bit of a privileged position to be in, to be able to be involved in family. But to hear more about Brooke's story, there's a fantastic podcast called More Than Milk that she's the latest feature on. So if anyone, I've just popped the link in the messages there to if anyone wants to jump on that, because it'll be I haven't listened to it yet, Brooke, but I will be, and but it'll be a really good chat about how she's got to where she is. And just following on from Brooke, dairy, in of all the agricultural commodities, dairy really is the one that gives the best opportunity for people from a non-farming background to come into dairy and build a business and a career and significant assets. Being able to start as a milker and work your way up to a farm hand and farm manager, and then with a bit of hard work and the right employer and that sort of thing, and probably foregoing a bit of cash in your pocket, as opposed to a really high wage, getting some young stock, being able to rear some young stock from the farm that you work on to start building a herd that gives you an asset that then allows you to take on share farming or leasing And then farm ownership, there's countless stories of people doing that from zero, from nothing. So, and that's pretty hard to do in the other ag commodities compared to dairy. So it's a really good story.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for highlighting that, Stu. That's awesome. I think it's it's really important to showcase that there are opportunities, and a lot of opportunities within the industry. Now, Brooke, on that note, I know that you are a director for the West Vic Dairy Board, as well as being a representative for Fonterra. Would you like to talk about what those roles entail? So obviously they're off farm, they're more industry based, but they're still incredibly important and such a great thing to be able to be working to represent your industry. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I guess I as a bit of background as to how I got there, I suppose. I started raising my family. So I had an 18-month-old daughter, and I was sort of looking for, well, I didn't know that I was looking for, but it turned out I was looking for something else to do off farm, because I wasn't in the dairy full time anymore, and sort of my identity around that was changing a little bit. So I got offered the opportunity to join the Fonterra Australia Suppliers Council, which I still sit in now, and Stu has also been a part of up until recently. But so that sort of just involves having a connection between farmers and their supplier for any communications. They've got, suppliers typically have their area managers, and we just provide a farmer avenue to do that, as well as being able to promote and conduct some really great initiatives, such as the Proud to be a Dairy Farmer program, which is aimed at young people, which has been really great. And we're seeing some really excellent results from that now. We're coming up to our 4th program in March next year. So that's been really good. And then have been on the West Vic Dairy Board for 12 months now, which has been, again, really good. Different side of the industry, dealing with, advocacy stuff, as well as regional farmer issues, and really just trying to better our regional dairy industry. We have quite a large dairy industry in the West, so making sure that decisions are being made and accounted for in the best interest of our farmers, and being able to provide a farmer voice for that is always good, and gives it a little bit more of a realistic point of view, I think. So yeah, really just being able to give back to the industry, and make sure that there is an industry that's strong and healthy for the future as well.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much. Brooke, would you mind just detailing in a little bit more the Proud to be a Dairy Farmer program?
Sure. So I have been involved with it from the start, which is something I'm very proud of. We get together in Melbourne. At the moment, it's once a year for 2.5 days. We bring in young people, sort of young or newer entrants into the industry is sort of what it's focused on. So we might look at people that are just leaving school and starting to work in a dairy, or enrolled in a TAFE course, that sort of thing like that. And we bring them in and show them all kinds of aspects of the industry that they wouldn't necessarily know from being inside the farm gate. So looking at different aspects of Dairy Australia, as well as supply processes. So Fonterra is sort of how we focus it around, obviously, given that Fonterra Australia Suppliers Council runs it. And then really just creating networks for those young people to be then, as well as equipping them with tools for finance and how to approach the banks for the prospect of financing and that sort of thing as well. Really just giving them a broad idea of the possibilities that they could look at within the industry. And yeah, as I said, we're seeing really great results from people with really good connections who may not necessarily know anybody else within the industry around their age, coming from relatively isolated areas or backgrounds, or who don't necessarily enjoy socializing with people. And they're coming out with lots of confidence and getting involved in industry stuff. We're seeing a lot of, so they might go in and get involved with their young dairy network in their regional areas and that sort of thing after that, or moving up into higher roles within their farm business, which is really great. So yeah, it's really exciting.
That's awesome. That sounds like such an empowering program and such a good way of providing that mentorship and giving those connections. That's really fantastic to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. All right. Now, we know that the theme of Science Week is innovation, and it's all about powering future industries. There are a huge number of innovations in the dairy industry. So, Stu, I might get you to talk to a couple of the innovations that you either utilized on farm or else are looking forward to hopefully utilizing into the future, and talk about the ways that they could improve production.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to talk a bit about what's coming next. I mean, there's a huge amount of tech used in dairies now, right from fully robotic milking, so no people involved in the actual milking of the cows, cow monitoring technology. But I'm sort of looking at what's coming next and what's going to excite me in the future. And the first one is a technology we call virtual fencing. So this is where cattle will wear collars that will be GPS tracked. So at the moment, our cows, while it might seem from the outside, our cows just go to the paddock and eat grass and come back to the dairy. It's pretty tightly controlled as far as how we grow grass and how we manage our paddocks. So, our cows get a new allocation of grass every single day, or after every milking. We're always monitoring those pastures. How fast are they growing? How much are the cows eating? Do we need to add supplement? Do we need to cut silage? Do we need all these different things? And at the moment, we're a little bit constrained by the size of our paddocks. We can divide them up with temporary fencing, but that takes time, and the paddock sizes aren't always perfect. And so what's coming is virtual fencing, where we'll potentially take out a lot of the fences on our farms. The cows will have collars, they'll be GPS tracked, and we'll be able to sit on an iPad or a desktop computer and draw the area we want the cows to have that day. And it brings all sorts of opportunities in that we can start them on a small area and spread it out during the day, so the cows eat the pasture really consistently. There's even the prospect of then reversing that and having the cows come to the dairy. We can manage wet conditions better because we can move the cows during the day, and we don't have to go out and put up the fences. We can do it all from an iPad or a computer. So I see huge time savings and productivity benefits from this technology. It does come with some caveats, I suppose, and some things that the industry need to work through. And one of those is these collars will use both, or at the moment they use audio signals to tell the cows when they're approaching the edge of their area, but they will also use an electrical stimulus as well. So they're almost a shock collar, I guess. The testing shows the cows adapt to it really, really quick. They know what those audio signals are. Our cows know what audio signals are already. If they hear a tractor or motorbike from kilometres away, their heads are up. They know we're getting shifted, we're getting fed. They hear the click of an electric fence being wound up, and they know, even if it's pitch black, they know what's going on. So they know audio signals. But we do need to make sure there's real safeguards in place if we're going to use electrical stimulation. So electric shocks, we use that already in our electric fences. The cows, they touch an electric fence, they get a shock. But that's something the industry needs to work through to make sure that we have everyone on board, and that includes the consumer, so that they're comfortable with that technology. But from a productivity point of view, I think it's going to be huge. But what comes with that is we need to know how to use that technology. We need to know how to program these things. We need people to build them. We need people to build the programs. We need people to service that technology when things go wrong, because more and more in farming, whether it's our whether it's our dairies, our tractors, our cow monitoring components, they're increasingly computerized, and we can't be across all of those things. The days of the farmer fixing everything are gone. We need support industries to help us look after those. So and even the people on farm utilising these technologies, it's very different to what my parents grew up with, and even different to what how we farm now, or how I started farming. So, but I think that'll be a great technology. I'm really looking forward to that one. When it's pouring down rain on a Sunday afternoon and I need to set up paddocks for tomorrow to stay inside by the fire and watch the footy, sounds a whole heap better than going out and setting up strip fences. So that's what I'm really looking forward to. Another one that I didn't actually have on my list, but have just thought of is, and it's out there now and getting better, is satellite technology, particularly monitoring our paddocks, monitoring pasture growth, monitoring pasture covers, so how much grass we've got in each paddock. That's here now. I'm not fully across it as yet, but again, that technology is only going to get better. The resolution on it's only going to get better. Just another tool that we can use that we don't have to go and physically look. But that throws me to drones. So drones, again, we hear they're going to do everything from our Uber Eats to for us, monitoring our paddocks, monitoring our animals, fertilizer, spraying, that sort of thing. So we spend a lot of time monitoring our paddocks. When I was talking about we're giving them new allocation every day, we've got to be out there, particularly through the spring, weekly to every 10 days to have a look at how fast our grass is growing, how much we've got, what do we need to change. That takes a fair bit of time. We need to control weeds. We're spreading fertilizer, but with drones, and when they become really autonomous, there's a huge opportunity that while they might be small and they can't do things as quick as our big, as the big spray rigs and big fertilizer trucks, they can do it 24 hours a day, and they can do it really targeted. So as opposed to spraying whole paddocks, they might be able to go out there and identify and spray individual weeds, which from an environmental point of view, we use a whole heap less chemicals because it's so targeted. It can be done exactly when we need it done. It will reduce the amount, so it saves us money, but it also means less chemicals in the environment. Again, monitoring pastures, for it to just go out, it could go for a fly around the farm every day and measure pastures. I haven't got time to do that every day, but a drone probably will. And provided some of there's research to show one of the biggest barriers to some of the uptake of these technologies is farmers being able to trust them, because they get this information back, they look at it and go, that can't be right. So they have to go and look themselves, so they don't use it because they just can't trust it, because these really are precision businesses. We run on pretty fine margins. We need to be pretty good at what we do, and we need to have really good information. So provided these technologies can give us the information we need and we can trust it, if it can give me a report every day on there's this much grass in each paddock and it's growing this fast, happy days. If it can spread fertilizer every single day behind the cows or in front of the cows, and even spread it at a variable rate, because we know parts of the paddock grow better than other parts, all of that sort of thing, and to do it by itself will be great. Again, going to take people who know what they're doing with this technology to run it and manage it, because and to fix it when it goes wrong, because again, we can't be across all of it. Some farmers will have a real interest in this and will be able to do it themselves. Most are busy just getting on with the job, and so we'll need people. We'll need people in our businesses that like this stuff and want to run it, and we'll need people in support industries to help us with it. So, and to build it and develop it. So there's a lot of this sort of stuff coming.
Yeah, that's really, really exciting to you. Thank you so much for sharing. I think it's really great that you've highlighted as well the fact that the jobs within the dairy industry do expand beyond farm into these support industries, looking at agri-tech and the way that we're going to be able to initiate this kind of technology into production systems and support farmers. I've just got a quick question for you. I wondered if you could tell me how you think the best way of addressing the hurdle that you mentioned about farmers potentially not trusting the data coming from drones or this type of technology. Obviously, if they're still feeling the need to go out and check to make sure that it's all accurate, that's adding, I guess, an additional pressure or else inhibiting them from adopting the technology. So what do you think would be a way of addressing that challenge?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's I think in our businesses, even with these things fully automated, and even the information that comes out of a robotic dairy, robotic milking system is huge, as far as what it can identify with animal health and that sort of thing. But the really good operators will still know their cows. They'll be looking at their cows, and that's not because they don't necessarily trust that information, because it usually is really good information. It'll be no different with our pastures. We still need to have an understanding so that we can identify when there's a problem. But I think it'll come down to the development and the ongoing tweaking of these and working with farmers, and a bit of that comes back to farmers to say, because there will be early adopters, and if they're part of being or part of taking on these technologies will be a bit of a responsibility on farmers to go back to the manufacturers, and hopefully they get a really good response from the manufacturers to say, hey, it's not getting this right. Come out to our farm and look, and let's see if there's a solution for this. So I think it's always going to take those early adopters to test this technology, know that it will be wrong sometimes at the start, just like anything new. The first iPhone was probably pretty rubbish until it got to where it is today, and so it will be that ongoing development, I think. And then as this technology becomes trusted, farmers telling the story a little bit as well. And I guess it's not the farmer's job to sell these technologies, but dairy, or farms in general, and dairy are pretty good at talking about what works and what doesn't work. Ag in general is pretty collaborative. We're particularly in dairy, we're not competing against our next door neighbour. Our product is fairly generic. In milk, it makes fantastic dairy products, but there's not too much differentiation between over the farm gate. So or over the fence to the next door neighbour. So farmers are pretty good at getting together and sharing knowledge and sharing ideas, and because you help your neighbour and they produce more milk, it doesn't impact on your ability to sell your milk. So I think that will be the next step when there is a good product, and this has happened forever. When there is a good product, farmers will talk about it and share it, and so, but it is a tricky one, I think, with a lot of things. If they're not right at the start, if farmers aren't getting the support or aren't getting the information back from the manufacturer when they say, hey, this isn't right, and they get stonewalled, then they'll chuck it out.
Totally fair enough. Very relatable. As a teacher, if something's not quite right, it's too hard to change it. You just got to get the new thing. So I can relate to that immensely. Brooke, I might ask you to share an innovation that you are excited about or that you're adopting on farm, and hear a little bit about how it's improving productivity, profitability, or sustainability within your production system.
Sure. So we have actually used relatively new technology on our farm for the last nearly 9 years, 8.5 years. So we purchased activity monitoring collars for our cows back in 2015. So they're quite common now. Back then there was very few, even fewer good ones. So we purchased directly out of Europe. We were the first in the world commercially to purchase these collars. So essentially what the collars do is they allow us to monitor when a cow is on heat, is the main thing that they're designed for, I suppose. So a cow being on heat obviously leads to the opportunity for those cows to become pregnant. So the faster that we can get cows pregnant, the more milk that the faster that lactation happens for that cow. So that's one aspect of what it does. The second aspect is that it allows us to monitor the health of every individual cow. So whether they're in the dairy or they're out in the paddock, those cows are constantly being monitored for how long they're sitting down for during the day, as well as how long they're standing up and eating for, or how long they're standing up and not eating. And the collars then produce a report that bench-lines that individual cow with its own data as well as the herd data. So that allows us to have a full insight as to what that cow's doing every minute of every day. And if they are way down in the paddock, away from the antennas that's situated at the dairy, once they get up to the dairy, all the information's on our computer ready to go. So it generates lots of reports that tells us a lot of stuff, a lot of information, which then allows us to siphon through what we need and what's relevant to what's going on at the time, such as if we're not joining, which is when we artificially inseminate the cows. If we're not joining, then we don't overly monitor when a cow is on heat, unless, of course, we're looking for empty cows, which has been really good. So we've been able to increase the amount of cows that we can get pregnant in a shorter period of time, which then saves us on labour and the time that it takes to do those joinings. And we've also been able to increase the health of the cows. So because we can closely monitor when everything's happening, we can sort of jump on any sick cows or suspect cows before they get very sick, which then means that we can treat them fast and get them back into being a productive member of the herd a lot faster than what we would. So in that time, so as I said, like we purchased them in 2015, so yeah, 8.5 years ago. The evolution of that technology since then has been phenomenal, both by the fact that there's much more competitors in that space now selling similar technology, but they all very much vary in terms of what they offer and the way that they do it, as well as obviously price comes into that as well. And then there's been the development of being able to look at the rumination of a cow. So rather than assessing the standing time, which then correlates to eating and that sort of thing, they can dive deeper into how that cow is processing its food. And I'm sure Stu would be able to explain that far better than I can. But layman's terms is that it can, it can much deeper assess how that cow is digesting its food, which then obviously entails how much milk it has the ability to produce. So that, which has been, I think it's safe to say that it's been a well-adopted technology, and it's certainly getting higher year on year with how many farmers are adapting that technology. There was, with anything technology-wise, there was a lot of kinks to work out at the start when it first came into the country. But now there's more and more software updates and things coming particularly out of Europe. They're the sort of the leaders in this technology, as they are with a lot of dairy related things. But so there's lots of new things changing. It's been really good for labour because, as I said, you're not having to have as many people in the dairy, but it also gives, anyone can log on to our computer and see what the herd's doing. So it gives our staff a little bit more interest in how the cows are performing and what can affect the results that we can see with our pregnancy testing, as well as our milk production, because you can see obviously if they've been in a poor paddock where they're not eating as much, how that correlates into how much milk is in our vat. So it keeps our younger staff particularly interested in what's going on.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Brooke. That's a really exciting technology, and it's so cool that you were there at the very beginning of it, I guess, for Australia. That's really, really awesome.
Yeah.
What we might do, just because I'm aware of the time, is I might invite anyone that has any questions to pop them in the chat box. If you would like to find out any more about opportunities in the dairy industry from both Brooke and Stu, or any of the innovations that they've spoken about, please feel free to pop any questions in the chat box there. While we're waiting for those questions, I might just ask Stu or Brooke, or both, to share maybe a piece of advice that they would have for a young person interested in entering the dairy industry.
Go for it, Stu.
Yeah, I'll go first. I guess the first bit of advice, particularly once you're in the industry, is to say yes to things, because there's lots of opportunities to do further learning, networking, develop your skills, develop your leadership skills in the dairy industry. And a lot of people are reluctant to say yes. Brooke spoke about the Proud to Be a Dairy Farmer program, which is just a great program. But there's countless, and I've been really lucky to be there to have been the beneficiary of a lot of different programs in the dairy industry over the last 13 years. But it does take saying yes. When if you're in the dairy industry and you're showing interest, you'll get identified. You'll get tapped on the shoulder, particularly from really good employers that are keyed into things like Westvic Dairy or Gipps Dairy over here. So the advice is to say yes and have a go at. And it could be a training course that your boss wants to put you through. It could be something that Dairy Australia or Fonterra or someone's putting on. But say yes and have a go, because it's there's huge opportunities to learn. There's huge opportunities to network. One of the best things that I've seen right through my growing up and my parents being involved in the dairy industry was the benefits they've got out of getting outside the farm gate. So getting off farm, meeting other farmers, talking about other things in the industry, you just learn so much. The farms can sometimes be a bit isolating because there's a lot going on, and at this time of year, I can go a couple of weeks and not make it past the end of our road because it's just flat out with calving. But outside of that, I don't think I'd be as happy in my job or hopefully as good at my job as I would be without doing these extra training courses and networking opportunities and that sort of thing. And the other one, and Brooke said before, the other great thing is there's roles on dairy farms right from the bottom, right from the ground level, of starting with maybe rearing some calves, or sorry, just turn my microphone off, on weekends or after school. There's plenty of weekend work on dairy farms, which is great for school students or people in study. Yes, it has some early starts and some late finishes, and sometimes you're out in the rain. But tell you what, the last couple of weeks have been pretty good weather for dairy farming, as long as we get a bit of rain soon. It's been pretty great. You get to work outside, you get to work with animals, hopefully you get to work with some really great people. And so there really is jobs at the ground level right up to, there really is that opportunity for career progression. So that'd be my 2 bits of advice.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that, Stu. We have a great question from our representative school, St. Bridget's Catholic College. So they've just asked, we've received 2 heifer calves today from a dairy farm. How do you deal with having excess calves, especially male calves?
I can answer that one. Yeah, you're right. We do have calves. So all our cows have a calf every year. And that's how they produce milk, just like people. They have to have a baby to produce milk. We the industry is changing in how it manages excess calves. So on our farm, we calve down close to 500 cows, and we'll keep about 150 or 160 of those calves for future breeding of our future herd, some bulls for breeding, and we've got a few beef calves in there as well. But at the moment, we do have excess calves. So we will try and find other homes for those calves where we can. So that may be excess heifer calves for someone to rear, to take into their own herd, or to on sell as in-calf cows. Some people will take the bulls to rear either as bulls or for beef, for dairy beef. But the reality is we do have excess calves, but they do have a market as well. So while they're on our farm, they're treated just like any other calf, which means they're fed, their health is monitored, they're looked after, they're warm and dry. And then they are sold for processing at around 5 days to a week old, and they go into a variety of products, and that might be food for. It's a really high protein, low fat meat in calves of that age, and so it's used in some baby foods, in some food for the elderly where they can't digest, they can't eat a steak, but they need protein and they need iron, and so it goes into those products. Some may go to pet food, but it does have a use, and even all of the byproducts from those animals and our dairy cows has a use as well. So the industry is also dealing with it. There's more and more research into how can we breed animals that are better for beef. So they're still good dairy animals, but they're better for rearing for beef. To go into more dairy beef programs, the use of sex semen to reduce the number of excess male calves we have, or excess calves in general, particularly when there's the ability to export some of those high value heifers. So there's not just one way of dealing with excess calves. I guess it's multifaceted, but we're pretty tightly regulated on how we deal with those calves, and how they're treated and how they're managed, and how they're how they're dealt with on farms. So that's where they go.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks heaps for that, Stu. That's an awesome explanation. We've got another question here that I will hand to anyone that would like to answer it. John's asked if we can talk a little bit about the economics in pretty basic terms of building up your own stock as a share farmer.
So I can talk to that if you like. So I think there is, same as a lot of aspects of being a share farmer, there's a lot of different ways that you can do it. Obviously, stock as a share farmer is your main asset. So most people can't afford or can afford, but I mean, it's still is same of buying a herd in as a whole, or whether you start from a couple of calves and work your way up. Really depends on your share farming arrangement and where you're at in that journey. As Stu mentioned earlier, you can start to rear calves from a very long time. Obviously, it takes 2 years from when a calf is born to when they are a milk producing animal, roughly 2 years. So it's certainly not a fast process. It's a longer process. And in terms of economics, it is also an expensive process to rear those calves from a little calf. You typically got to buy the calf. You've got to buy a milk source, whether that's raw milk or milk powder, pellets, hay, and land to put them on for 2 years until that animal is productive. Or, as I said, there's other ways. If you were already in your share farming journey, you could look at things like vendor terms. If the farm owner has cows that they're wanting to sell, they could come up with an arrangement that way. Or if you have a really good relationship with a bank manager, which is key when you're a share farmer. you can access finance to do that. There's no right or wrong way to do it, and there's no fast or easy way, essentially, because the fast way is usually an expensive way, and the less expensive way is a long way. But both are just as beneficial as each other. Obviously, you get to see the calf, you get the benefits of rearing that calf up to a heifer and into a cow, or you can purchase animals that are productive day of. But yeah, no real right way to do it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Just expand on that for with Brooke as well. So and for some of these, particularly rearing your own, the farm you're on, that employer or farm owner is going to be key in how that happens. But more and more, it's harder and harder. These families are smaller from a start. So the days of 5 or 6 kids and at least 1 or 2 of them are going to take over the farm are not nowhere near as common anymore. So there's going to be more and more farm owners that are wanting to keep their farm. They don't want to sell their farm. They don't want to get off their farm, but they can't run it all themselves anymore. And so more and more, and hopefully, and people of Brooke and my generation will see that opportunity in young people to say, this person's really keen with the right help, they will be an asset to me in 10 years' time when I'm ready to step back. And if we can give them the right help and advice and then access to stock and maybe somewhere to rear them, then so it does take a bit of foresight from the farm owner, but that can be a real win-win, because then by the time the farm owner's ready to step back, their farm manager's got 20%, 30%, 50% of the herd, and they're ready to go. The other thing, and as Brooke said, if you're going to rear calves on farm, sometimes you can make that part of your package. So instead of going to the boss and saying, hey, I want, I'm due for a pay rise, it might be, instead of a pay rise, can I get those excess calves that would have been sold, and I'll clean up that old hay shed and I'll rear them there, but then I'll find somewhere after that, or something like that. And again, you're going to forego a little bit of cash while you're rearing those calves. The beauty of cows is they make little cows. Last time I checked, utes and jet skis didn't make little utes and jet skis. So that's the beauty of cows. And they do have, even if you don't have the opportunity to bring those cows into the herd you're in, an in-calf heifer, a good in-calf, well-grown heifer is going to have a value, and then you can use that money to then turn back into more cows, paying for the land that you're rearing them on, that sort of thing. Brooke's exactly right. It's not going to be fast. You're going to forego a little bit of outright cash, but you are as well if you're going to go and invest in a house, buy shares. None of it comes easy. No matter what you're trying to build in life, comes just lands on your doorstep. But I've seen some really good stories of people on the right farms and with the right help that within 10 years have got $1 million worth of cows, and a share farming. So, or $800,000 worth of stock. So, pretty hard to do that in a standard 9 to 5 in 10 years without being really, really smart about what you do. So there's big opportunities.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Stu. Thank you so much, Brooke. It's been a fantastic discussion. I'm so pleased that we've had the opportunity to hear all about the opportunities and the innovations that are both currently being adopted and also potentially will be adopted into the future within the dairy industry. It's been fantastic. I'd like to say a massive thank you to Dairy Australia for helping us to put on this event, and a huge thank you to all of the schools that were able to join us today. Massive thank you to St. Bridget's Catholic College being our representative school, and to Allendale East Area School for joining us as well. Thanks again to our panelists today. It's been phenomenal. If you'd like to access more food and fibre learning resources to continue your Science Week journey, jump onto the Prime Zone website or visit the Career Harvest website to learn more about careers in the dairy industry and in all of Australia's food and fibre industries. Thanks again for your time today. The recording of this event will be accessible on the Piper YouTube channel soon. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon. Happy Science Week.